What's it like living as a female expat in Asia? What are some of the financial realities I need to face before I decide to make my big move? And once I have made my big move, how long will it be until I meet my tribe and make some friends? Well, if those questions or anything about being an expat in Asia are interesting to you, it is great to have you with me. My name is Wendy, and for more than 3 decades, I've lived and worked in 5 different countries in Asia, and I still live and work in Asia now more than 10 years in Thailand. Now, today I want to talk about a topic that some people might find a little bit confronting, but it's super important, and I haven't really seen it addressed in many other forums or expat videos. And this is what happens when an expat dies in their new country. And I have personal reasons for talking about this because I've actually been through the process a couple of times with, unfortunately, with people that I know who've passed away and the complications around that. And just the other day, I was speaking to a friend of mine who is, we would describe in the expat community as a snowbird. She spends 6 months of the year in Europe and the other 6 months of the year in Asia, always chasing the sun, so never having a winter. And that's something that a lot of people in Asia, if they're retired, do, or digi-nomads, they do that as well. They don't fancy the cold, so they kind of skip, and might be 3 months, 4 months, 6 months here, 6 months here, whatever it is. And she said to me, we were having a coffee, and she said to me, the way that I'm living now, she and her husband, the way that I'm living now, I think it'll work for another 10 years. But in another 10 years, when we get older, I don't know what it will be like. And then she hesitated and she said, because, we might, I don't know where I'm going to, and I said, die? And she said, yes, what happens? What happens if I die when I'm overseas? And it's a real thing. So I mentioned that I had personal experience with this, and I did. It was during the COVID period, and a very, very dear friend of mine, who is actually an American but had been based in Hong Kong, which is where I knew him from, passed away unexpectedly. He wasn't terribly old, and he just died. People sometimes just die. And the problem was, it being COVID time, his wife was stuck in Europe. They're both American, but she was working in Europe. He was in Thailand because they had a place there. I was in Thailand. So what happened was that a lot of the things that needed to be organized kind of, I became involved in, because I had this person's, well, I didn't have, but this person's body was here, and the wife couldn't get back. And as an American, the first thing you do is contact the embassy. It's important to remember that embassies are very good at giving advice, and that is their job to foreign nationals. If you're a foreign national in another country, whatever country that is, when you contact your embassy, they will do everything that they can to advise you. They will set you up with the right people. They'll point you in the right direction. They'll do all of those things. But it's almost unheard of that they can do the work for you. And in this particular case, because I was not married to this person, because I have no family relationship to this person, we had to get things like consent. There were forms about that. The wife had to prove that she was his wife from Europe. And guess where all of their documentation was? Either in Hong Kong or in Thailand. And I had to go through their documents and find things. So it was incredibly, incredibly complicated. More complicated because it was the COVID time. But if you do die overseas, you need to really, really organize yourself before that happens, so that when it does happen, if it does happen, things run a little bit more smoothly. Now, you may think to yourself, if you're a young person, 35, did you know, and say, oh, well, actually, this video isn't for me, but, accidents happen, people get sick. And so if it does happen, let's look at some of the realities around what happens to the body, because now it's just a body, right? What happens to the body if you're overseas? A lot of people think, well, what I'd like to have happen is I'd like to be buried at home. I'd like my body to be repatriated and buried at home. Let's talk about cost for a second. And that may sound ugly, but I'm going to be realistic with you, all right? The average cost of repatriating a body to the UK or to the US falls between £2,000 and £6,000 at a minimum. And there are reasons for that. Now, in Thai baht, I converted that. It's 252,000, actually nearly 260,000 baht, 260,000 Thai baht. Now, That is a ton of money in Thailand when I tell you how much a cremation costs. But even if you're going to repatriate the body, even if your desire is to have your body taken home, there are so many things that need to happen. Because if you've died unexpectedly, just like in any country, they're going to have an autopsy because they need to find out why you've died. Now, you need to be able to allow, they need to be able to be allowed to perform an autopsy. So there needs to be, if not next of kin, and the chances of you having a next of kin, unless you're married to somebody in the country, might be slim. So there's paperwork around who's got authority over this dead body and how can they hand over authority to the necessary factors. So autopsy if it's unexpected. If it's deemed that it doesn't need an autopsy, if you're going to repatriate, first things first, embalming. The body must be embalmed to travel on an aeroplane. Then you need an airtight container that is going to contain the body because, airplanes go into altitude, everything needs to be contained. Then there needs to be paperwork about who the body's released to on the other side. There needs to be, what else have we got? We've also got funeral directors. You've got to get a funeral director involved. Now, I want to say there are companies who handle all of this for you. And all being well, if you've got the money or someone's got the money to do that, you can put it in somebody else's hands. But you are still going to have to get all of that paperwork organized. Wills. Do you have a will? Don't forget, if we're not talking about death and you're in a coma, do you have a living will? Super, super important if you're an expat, because religious reasons prevent Thais from turning off life support. It's a Buddhist thing. They can't do it. They won't do it. And if your desire is to not be kept in a vegetative state for the next 8 years because you've got a brain injury, you've got to have a living will that says something like that, and somebody has to be put in charge of turning off that life support, because the chances are that the doctors can't do it for you. So I know this is grim, all of it's grim, but this is a reality. So back to moving the body. All right, we've got to have local transport from here to the airport, and then someone to pick up the body from the other side, from wherever they're going, from the US or Australia or New Zealand, wherever they're going, and getting them to the next resting place. There in the UK, I know there are often delays about burials and things like that. So it's never easy. It's not a fun topic, and it's never easy, but it's particularly complex if you're moving a body of a foreign national from one country into another. Unless you're a member of the armed forces, where that whole thing's set up and it's kind of kept in-house, it's really, really tricky. Now, I mentioned the cost before, as compared to, in Thai baht. And the reason that I'm saying that is because, unfortunately, again, but I have been in the situation where, people have passed away, and I've been to cremations. Now, in Asia, cremation is by far the most preferred way of disposing of a body, and partly it's to do with religious reasons again, but particularly in Southeast Asia. But even in Hong Kong, where I lived for a long time, there's simply not the land. To buy the land to bury a body is outrageously expensive. So you're looking at cremation. Okay, so the cost of a cremation in Thai baht, depending on how many monks you have singing and what you want to do with the sort of the religion around it, even if you just want a really, really simple one, it might set you back 5, 10, maybe up to 15 or 20,000 baht. Remember that I said that moving the body overseas is close to, what did I say, 260,000 baht as opposed to 10 to 15,000 baht. So you can see that repatriation of the body, if it's what your loved ones desire, or it's what you desire, it can be done, but the cost is significantly higher. Can you be cremated and then somebody take your ashes over to the other country? Absolutely. And I think there is something about, you're supposed to declare it. Do people sometimes do that and not declare it? You bet. I know that for sure. Maybe you want to sprinkle some ashes in this place. Maybe you want to sprinkle some ashes in that place. It doesn't really matter. And if you've got a bag of sand in your hand luggage, well, you've got a bag of sand in your hand luggage, and that's that. But these are some of the realities around what happens. When I mentioned about the monks and things, if you've never been to a Buddhist cremation, they are quite confronting. It's not like how we do it in the West, where everything sort of, a curtain comes across and music plays and the body disappears. It's all a little bit more open and more public. It's not out in the open like it is in India and some parts like that. It can be, but these days there are crematoria where there's a shut door, but there's also a process where you place a lit flower on the body. You're sending the soul on. Of course, remember that in Buddhism, this life is just one of many lives that you're going to have. So the mourning for the body as such is not as distinct. It's the soul moving on. So it's a completely different thing. As a Westerner, I can tell you that my very, very first open style Thai cremation was incredibly confronting. And I've talked to some of my friends about what would happen if I was to die or if we were to die suddenly in Thailand, and came to the conclusion that rather than have it so open, perhaps just do that privately, let the monks deal with it, because it's monks and it'll happen at a temple. So the monks will deal with it, and then, they just have a party at the pub, something like that. But this is something to think about when you're an expat. You need to, I know it sounds hideous, but you need to make provision for it. You need to let somebody know what you want to have happen, so that when the worst does happen, there's not confusion and the unexpected extra stress. It's not like it isn't a stressful situation already. It's a hugely stressful and terribly sad situation, and you've got people who might not have the authority, or just don't know what you wanted, or just don't know what to do, or relatives who are grieving, who feel that they're just so far away and they can't help, trying to get on a plane, or getting people out. It's just so confronting and so difficult that expats who are long-term expats or snowbird expats, or even if you're just here for more than a month, you need to have something in place and let somebody know that if this happens, there is a plan set in place. Don't leave it up to chance, because it's just too tough. And having been through it a couple of times, my best advice to you would be, you don't have to get all morbid about it, but do kind of think about what it is that you want to have happen, and start to look at the reality of it. Because for a lot of people, £6,000 is a stack of money. Well, I think that works at about 8,000 US, which would be, I don't know, 100 million Australian dollars, because the Australian dollar's in the toilet. But whatever that is in Aussie dollars or New Zealand dollars, or wherever you're from, South African rand, whatever it is, it's a ton of money. So get a plan in place. Think about what you're going to do. Put it in there as one of the checklists. And let's say you've got pets, or let's say your furniture or something like that. Like try and set something up so that whoever's left behind to help you at this time can do it with respect and love and compassion to your wishes. That would be the best thing to do. Because when you die unexpectedly, like my friend did, there were a whole bunch of people running around like blue-ass flies, as they would say in Australia, and it was really tough, on top of the grieving. So that was really hard. So it's not a cheery topic. I do apologise for that, but it is a realistic topic, and I think it's absolutely something that you need to consider. I will link down below a couple of the companies that I found who will repatriate bodies, or you can just do some Google searching for yourself and find out. If you've got any comments on that, if you've had experience with any of that, feel free to share that with us. It is lovely to see people commenting more and more on my videos. I really appreciate that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Feel free to share this video. And for the rest of it, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. You don't have to think about death anymore now. I've done that for you. Take care, and we'll speak again soon. Bye.